There are looks that don't ask questions, they strip you down, words that seem innocent but hide hunger. And at your age, many believe you're no longer capable of awakening that kind of desire. But let me tell you something. They're blind. And maybe you are too. Today, I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm here to open your eyes. Because while you think young women only see you as a nice guy, an older man with no real significance, the truth is that many times they're testing you, and you don't even realize it. Do you want to know when a young woman wants something more from you, but doesn't dare say it directly? Then stick around, because in this video, I'm going to reveal the 7 phrases that come out of her mouth when she's looking at you with different eyes. And I warn you, the last one is the one that can change everything. I'm Celia, and I'm not here to entertain you, but to wake you up. Make yourself comfortable because you're about to hear what no one else dares to tell you. Tell me something. How many times have you heard that question and didn't know how to read it? How many times has a younger woman looked you straight in the eye with that half smile and dropped an innocent, "So why don't you have a girlfriend?" And you, without giving it much thought, just gave her some random answer, as if it were a casual question, nothing serious? Listen closely, because this is where most older men get it wrong. It's not just a simple question. It's not curiosity. It's a calculated shot. It's the first move in a game she's already started playing with you. This is the first point we're going to talk about today. Why don't you have a girlfriend? The disguised question that reveals desire. And I want you to understand what it really means when she says it to you. Imagine this, an older man, with experience, with scars, who has lived more than any of those young guys around her. A man who's worked all his life, raised children, seen loves come and go. Do you think she doesn't notice that? Of course she notices, but there's more. She also notices that this man walks alone. And when she throws you that question, she's not asking out of mere politeness. She's testing the waters. She's evaluating whether there's room in your life and in your bed. The problem is, many of you, instead of reading between the lines, respond with an awkward laugh, an excuse, or a hollow phrase. You miss the chance to respond with confidence, to make it clear that you don't need company to feel complete, but that you're not closed off to someone who can see your worth. Because deep down, that question is a disguised compliment. She wouldn't be asking why you don't have a girlfriend if she wasn't at least considering, even for a second, being part of that answer. You know what the mistake is? You carry years of hearing that past a certain age, young women only see you as a nice uncle, a mentor, a man without spark, and you've come to believe it. So when they ask you that question, you don't see the open door. You only see your aged reflection. But they don't. They see something that many young men don't have: calmness, firmness, experience, and yes, that mystery that comes from not being desperate. I know the story of a man named Stephen, 62 years old, widowed for 5 years. Always the first to arrive at the workshop, the last to leave. He had a client 20 years younger who, every time she stopped by, would ask the same question: "How is it that a man like you is alone?" And Stephen, with nervous laughter, would say he was too old for those things. Until one day, she didn't come back. Years later, by accident, he ran into one of her friends and found out that woman had always been waiting for him to make a move, to show her he was still alive, that not everything was shut down. But Stephen, blinded by his own resignation, never understood the message. That's how it works. They won't tell you directly. They're not going to confess their intentions like an open book. They throw you a question, a loose phrase, waiting for you to read the subtext. Because a man who knows who he is doesn't need to explain himself. And that's where your power lies. So the next time you hear, "Why don't you have a girlfriend?" don't ignore it or make yourself small. Respond with the firmest truth you've got. Because I'm not looking for just anyone. And the right person who knows how to walk beside me, not behind or ahead, hasn't come along yet. Believe me, that answer is worth more than 1,000 empty compliments. Because you're not just answering, you're making it clear that your life isn't on hold waiting for approval. Now that we've opened our eyes to that disguised question that, why don't you have a girlfriend, which is nothing more than a camouflaged invitation, it's time to go further. Because what comes next isn't just random words. It's a much more subtle psychological game where every phrase carries powerful emotional weight if you know how to read it. We've reached the second key point of this video, and it's, I know someone like you, the comparison that hides interest. Has anyone ever told you that? A young woman sits with you, smiles, and suddenly says, I know someone who's just like you. She says it lightly, as if it were just a casual comment. But let me be clear, it's not. She's not talking about another man. She's talking about you, about how she perceives you, about what you stir within her. And behind that comparison, there's a silent need to connect with you, without fully exposing herself. From practical psychology, we know that people project. When someone mentions a third party to describe something, often it's because they're not brave enough to speak directly about their own desires. They use the idea of someone else as a mirror. What she's doing is throwing you bait, seeing if you'll bite, but if you're not paying attention, you'll dismiss it as a trivial comment. Why does she do it this way? Because we live in a society that teaches older men to dim their light, to miss the signs, to believe they're no longer part of the game. And young women are taught it's risky to be direct, that they have to test the waters before exposing themselves. So, instead of clearly saying, I'm interested in you, she compares you to someone else to gauge how you react. That's where many men fail, because they don't realize she's talking about her own perceptions, not that supposed third person. Here's something the Stoics understood well: the importance of having mastery over yourself, of being present without letting insecurities or biases cloud your judgment. A man who doesn't have clarity about his own worth will hear that comparison and think, she probably sees me as a nice older guy, a friend. But a man who has cultivated his inner strength, who has worked on his emotional resilience, will recognize that the comparison is just a pretext to get closer, to see if you can read between the lines. The most dangerous thing isn't that she makes the comparison. The truly destructive thing is that you interpret it from a place of insecurity, because that's what's been stealing years from you. The idea that, because you have more experience, more wrinkles on your skin, you're no longer desirable, you can't play on the same field. That's a lie you've been sold, and every time you fall into that trap, you lose. Now I'll tell you something crucial. The next time you hear that phrase, don't let the conversation move on without addressing it. Don't respond with a simple, oh yeah, that's interesting. Look at her, hold her gaze, and say, maybe that someone is like me, but believe me, he's not the same. That makes all the difference. Because there, you're showing her that you know who you are, that you don't need to compare yourself, that you have your own value, unshakable. For a young woman, that's a magnet. Not the man who makes himself small and accepts the comparison, but the one who knows he's unique. So far, we've broken down two signals that, if you don't know how to read them, go unnoticed and keep you in the dark. That disguised question about your single status and the comparison to another man that's really just a reflection of what she sees in you. But now, pay attention, because we've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things start to change. Today, I'm going to talk to you about, I bet you were a rebel when you were young, the hidden compliment that tests your masculinity. This comment seems harmless, almost like a friendly compliment that doesn't really matter. A young woman looks at you, smiles playfully, and says, I bet you were a rebel when you were younger, a guy who broke the rules. And you, maybe, take it as a sweet memory, laugh, go along with it, talk about how things were back in your youth. But you don't see what's really happening. She's not interested in your past. She doesn't care if you were a rebel without a cause or a quiet guy back in 1980. What she's measuring is whether that fire is still burning. She's looking for signs that you're still capable of breaking molds, of living by your own rules, no matter your age. From practical psychology, this is a classic test. It's called a congruence test. She wants to know if what you project on the outside is backed up on the inside. If you're a man who, even though the years have gone by, still has character, autonomy, spirit. Because the biggest mistake many make here is falling into nostalgia. They respond by telling stories from the past as if they were already part of a museum, as if everything that once made them free, strong, daring had been left behind. And let me make something clear. Nothing kills attraction faster than resignation. If she senses that all you have left are dusty memories, she will instantly put you in the category of interesting but harmless. And that's not where she wants you to be. So what should you do? Here's the practical strategy. The next time she throws that comment at you, don't just talk about the past. Use that phrase as a springboard to show her that rebellion isn't about age, it's about attitude. Respond with something like, "I was, yes, but the real trick is to never stop being one, even as the years go by. Why do you think I'm still here, doing what I want, without asking anyone's permission?" You're not just answering her, you're giving her a direct demonstration that you still have fire, that you haven't burned out. Think of an old tree, full of scars, with strong branches. Some only see the worn bark, but if they look closely, they'll notice it still gives shade, fruits, life. That's who you are, if you know how to show it. And I'll tell you one more thing. When she hears that response, she understands you're not a tamed man, that you're not waiting for someone else to decide for you. And that, believe me, in a world full of men who have given up their power, is irresistible. Now, before moving on to the next point, I want you to do something for yourself. If this message is resonating with you, if you've ever heard that phrase and didn't know how to respond, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. And I want to know where you're watching me from. Leave a comment with the words, "Still burning." Because yes, there's still much to discover, and the lessons to come will open your eyes even more. And don't forget, the last one will be the most decisive. We've made it clear that the fire doesn't go out with age unless you decide to blow out the flame yourself. Now, it's time to talk about another subtle game, one that many men don't know how to decipher, and which ends up becoming a dangerous mental trap. We've reached the fourth point of this video. I feel safe with you. The most dangerous phrase if you don't know how to read between the lines. To many, this phrase sounds like a harmless compliment, even a sort of reward. That's nice, they think. I make her feel safe, calm. But this is where I need you to pay attention, because if you don't fully understand what it means and you settle into that misunderstood sense of security, you end up falling into the worst zone for any man, the comfort zone, the predictable man, useful but invisible. When a young woman tells you, "I feel safe with you," she's not always talking about a fatherly protector or a trustworthy friend. She's probing. She's observing if that safety comes with masculine strength, with character, with clear boundaries. But here's where most fail. The majority hear that phrase and automatically let their guard down. They think they've already won. They become that type of man who's always available, always attentive, always willing, but never challenging, never unpredictable. Do you know why this mistake is so destructive? Because security without polarity turns into monotony. It's like a bridge that seems firm but leads nowhere. And the worst part is that the man doesn't realize it. He settles into that comfort zone thinking everything is fine, believing that by being the good, always accessible man, he'll earn respect, desire, recognition. But over time, he starts to notice something. She grows distant, she gets bored, she seeks excitement elsewhere. And he's left wondering what he did wrong. The mental trap is subtle, because society, your own children, even your friends have told you 1,000 times that a man must be stable, must be reliable, must be an unshakable pillar. And yes, that part is true. But no one warns you about the other side, that if you're only stability, without challenge, without mystery, you become part of the landscape. A presence that calms, but doesn't excite. So, what should you do when you hear that phrase? It's not enough to just nod and smile. The key is to respond in a way that reaffirms your strength without falling into passivity. Something as simple as saying, "It's good that you feel safe, but it's also good that you can't predict me all the time. That phrase changes everything, because there, you're making it clear that yes, you are a safe place, but you're also a man who lives on his own terms, who is not tamed by age or by anyone's expectations. The consequence of not doing this is clear. You become the useful man, but also the disposable one. You become that piece of furniture that's always there, but no one looks at twice. And at your age, after everything you've lived through, do you really want to spend your days being background decor? So, the next time you hear, "I feel safe with you," remember, it's a doorway, not a destination. It's up to you whether you choose to walk through it as a complete man or remain trapped as a comfortable but forgotten ornament. We've already talked about that misleading phrase where they think feeling safe with you means everything is settled, when in reality they're testing you to see if you're more than just a comfortable refuge. But now we're stepping into more dangerous territory, because this is where many older men end up falling without even realizing it. We've reached the 5th point of this video, and it's, "I wish more men were like you," the compliment that's really a disguised challenge. When a young woman says that to you, the first thing you feel is satisfaction. You think, "She's acknowledging me. Finally, someone values who I am." But this is where the trap closes. Because this compliment, if you take it at face value, is like an invisible chain that starts binding you without you noticing. It's the kind of comment that, if you don't handle it with a cool head, makes you fall into the trap of becoming the pleasing man, the good man, the man who lives to be accepted and recognized, but never challenging, never truly desired. Why is it so destructive? Because it places you on a pedestal, but one built so you never move. They're telling you that you're better than the others, but under their rules, under their expectations. And many of you, tired of years of being invisible, of feeling irrelevant, accept that role with open arms. The result? You end up being the model man, but without a soul. The man who does everything right, who doesn't disrupt, who doesn't demand, who doesn't take risks. And little by little, without noticing, you become someone who lives to fulfill that image they expect of you, a prisoner disguised as an example. The worst part is that the more you try to maintain that status of the different man, the good one, the more frustrated you become. Because you don't get real respect, you don't get genuine desire, just distant admiration, the kind of attention that doesn't fulfill, that doesn't nourish. And every day that passes, you ask yourself why, if you're the one who behaves best, you end up feeling empty. The answer is simple. Nobody desires a man who lives to please. How do you turn this around? It's not about rebelling overnight or breaking everything apart recklessly. Here you need to adopt a radical mindset. A mindset that doesn't seek external validation, but starts from a harsh truth. You weren't put on this earth to be applauded. You're here to live on your own terms. That phrase, "I wish more men were like you," should be an alarm for you, not a prize. When you hear it, instead of puffing up your chest, ask yourself, am I being true to myself, or am I acting as others expect? The strategy is simple, but not easy. You have to learn not to live dependent on recognition. You have to become the man who doesn't fear making others uncomfortable, who doesn't fear setting his own conditions. You don't need to be rude or aggressive, but you do need to be firm. If she says she wishes more men were like you, respond with a calm smile and a phrase that makes it clear who's in charge. Maybe that's why I'm interested in being different, not like anyone else. Because as long as you remain trapped in the need to please, you will continue to be invisible to what truly matters: respect, desire, independence. And the longer you stay there, the harder it will be to break free. But it's not impossible. Breaking this pattern requires courage, and above all, it requires you to stop waiting for permission to be yourself. We've made it clear that living to please, waiting to be recognized as the different man, is the slowest and most silent way of losing yourself. But if you think that's dangerous, get ready, because the next step is even more insidious. Here, not only is your respect at stake, but your dignity. We've reached the 6th point of this video, and it's, don't you get tired of being alone? The provocation designed to break down your defenses. I want you to visualize this scene clearly. You're at peace, maybe enjoying your routine. You found a certain stability. You move at your own pace, not depending on anyone. And one day, in a seemingly innocent way, she throws that question at you. Don't you get tired of being alone? Her tone is kind, almost concerned. But behind those words, there's something more. An emotional trap that, if you don't know how to detect it, drags you straight into dependency. Because that question isn't trying to find out if you're happy with your life. No, it's trying to detect your voids. It's trying to see if you waver, if you doubt, if you're willing to sacrifice your autonomy for company. And this is where many older men fall. They feel vulnerable. They start questioning themselves. Maybe I am alone. Maybe no one wants to walk by my side anymore. And at that moment, they start to give in, to settle for any company, even if it's not the right one, to lower their standards, to accept less, just to avoid hearing that question again. But let me tell you something raw and clear. There are solitudes that set you free, and there are relationships that chain you down. And when you allow that question to disarm you, you risk surrendering yourself to mediocre relationships, to connections where you're no longer the one who decides, but the one who begs. You become a man who trades his freedom for crumbs of attention. And believe me, that's not life. That's a sentence. Do you know what happens when someone stays trapped in this pattern? You see it in their eyes, in the way they stop having an opinion, stop making decisions, stop setting boundaries. They become docile men, always available, always grateful, just for the mere presence of someone else. And that is the fastest way to become irrelevant, to lose respect, even from those who claim to care about you. Now I want you to ask yourself this brutal question. Would you rather be alone and at peace, or poorly accompanied and on your knees? Because no one who truly values you will ask if you're tired of being alone as a way of tempting you to give up. They'll ask, yes, but to find out if you're enjoying your life, if you're the master of your own decisions, not to lure you into giving yourself up. So, the next time you hear that provocation disguised as concern, I want you to respond without hesitation. True loneliness is not being alone. It's being surrounded and feeling empty. Because a man who has peace within himself doesn't need to fill gaps with shallow presences, and that's the kind of man who not only keeps his dignity intact, but becomes magnetic, precisely because he's not selling himself to the highest bidder. You've already seen how a simple question like, "Don't you get tired of being alone?" can be the perfect bait to make you lower your guard and end up trapped in a life you didn't choose. And if you've made it this far, you know that every phrase we've analyzed is an open door for you to lose control if you don't know how to close it in time. But now, we've reached the 7th point, and this is the most dangerous of them all, the easiest to overlook, but also the one that determines whether you remain a free man or become invisible forever. It's time to talk about we should do something fun sometime, the camouflaged invitation you must not ignore. It sounds like just another phrase, doesn't it? An innocent suggestion, nothing serious. But listen to me carefully, because this is anything but innocent. When a young woman says, "We should do something fun sometime," she's not testing your schedule, she's testing your initiative. She's measuring whether you're a man who takes action, or one who lets life pass him by. It's an invitation, yes, but it's also a challenge. She wants to see if you can take that sometime and turn it into a now. The mistake, and it's one I've seen far too often, is that many of you smile, nod, and let it go. You think, she mentioned it, if she really wants to, she'll bring it up again. But let me be brutally honest. When you don't take the initiative, the interest cools off. You become a man who doesn't act, who waits, who hesitates. And every time you do that, she places you one step further away from her desire. Not because she tells you, but because she's already figured out you're not the kind of man who moves pieces, who takes risks, who leads. This is where you need to understand something fundamental. Life and relationships don't reward the one who waits. they reward the one who acts. When she throws that phrase your way, she's giving you the chance to show that you're not only firm and confident, but you also have direction, that you're not here to be swept away by the current, but to shape it. The difference between the man who responds and the one who remains silent is simple. One understands that every word is a test, an invitation to lead. The other keeps waiting for the perfect moment, not realizing it already passed. So the next time you hear we should do something fun sometime, don't smile as if you've been handed a flower. Take control and say, "Perfect, how about tomorrow? Life doesn't wait." Because that's what separates the men who truly live from those who merely survive. And no, there are no excuses. If you've made it this far, you already know that every one of these phrases is a mirror. Either you decide to see yourself clearly and do something, or you keep repeating the same pattern until there's nothing left to recover. The transformation doesn't depend on anyone else. Not on them, not on age, not on the past. It depends solely on you. The question is, are you going to keep sitting around, waiting for others to chart your path, or are you going to stand up and take control once and for all? You decide, because after today, you can't say you didn't know. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't a channel for fragile souls. This is not a place for those looking for sweet words to make them feel comfortable. We don't sugarcoat reality here. We lay it out exactly as it is. Because life after 50 isn't an excuse to give up. It's your last chance to take the wheel and stop being a spectator in your own existence. Today I've shown you 7 phrases that often go unnoticed, but if you don't know how to read them, they'll drag you down. Phrases that draw the line between a man who lives by his own rules and one who lets himself be carried away by other people's expectations. You can't say you didn't know anymore. The decision is right in front of you. Either you take control, or you keep drifting along, waiting for others to give you permission to live. Not everyone has the guts to listen to uncomfortable truths all the way to the end, but you did, and that already says something about you. So I want you to make it clear in the comments. Write the phrase, "It's my time." Let it be known. And also tell me which country you're watching from, because here, geography doesn't matter. What matters is your mindset. I'm Celia, and this is House of Wisdom. This channel doesn't exist to entertain you. It exists to wake you up, to shake you up, to remind you that dignity, strength, and respect aren't begged for, they're built. If this message resonated with you, subscribe now and join this community of men and women who have decided to stop living on pause. Share this video with someone you know needs to hear it, because sometimes an uncomfortable truth is the only thing standing between someone and a different life. And don't leave just yet. The conversation doesn't end here. Check out the 2 videos popping up on the screen right now. Each one is another piece of the puzzle. I'll be waiting for you there, because there's still so much to break down. And you, if you've made it this far, know you didn't come here to settle.